Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Howdy, Red O'Loughlin here. We're on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. My guest today is Doug Smith, and we'll get to him in just a moment. When I'm not hosting TV shows, I do 3 every Thursday, back to back to back. I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat symptoms, and you'll always be treating symptoms. So I research it. I look at it from a chemical perspective. That's what I write about. That's what I speak about. But I also help people get their books written. I've helped quite a few authors publish I think almost 50 books for other people. And so that's one of the other passions I have in life, is helping others get their material out. And most of the people that I've done are the first time, and it's the only book they've written. So I've written several books myself, mostly on health and wellness, but a couple others on the subconscious mind and a couple other subjects. So I think that's all I want to talk about. I spent 31 years in the military, but it's to be covered later, I guess. Doug Smith. Do you want Doug or Douglas? You prefer Doug or Douglas, Doug?
Oh, Doug is fine, please.
Okay, Doug is fine. Doug has an unusual background, but it encompasses several things we talked about in the past and more. We've talked about mental health, but we talked about it in a probably more clinical than actual. We've talked about incarceration, primarily when my daughter was on. She was a prison guard for about 14 years. She's now working for the constable's office. In fact, she just got a new job for this year and super happy. But now we have a situation where the guest has written a book, is an expert in coaching and leadership training based on his experiences. And it's kind of a unique situation because it's not something I've run into before, but it's something I think our audience is just going to love to hear. So, Doug, please join me up here on stage, and let's. Why don't you give us a little background on who Doug Smith is and why you're different than the other Doug Smith Canadian author who has 140,000 books in 240,000 languages. I mean, it's amazing. I've tried to research you, and I'm finding all sorts of stuff on someone else.
Oh, wow. I have someone to live up to. That's great. So my name is Doug Smith. I am a social worker. I'm an advocate. I worked about 12 years in public policy, everything from social welfare policy to criminal justice policy and the intersection of mental health and criminal justice. I was an adjunct professor of policy at the University of Texas at Austin. And I am also a person with lived experience of mental illness, substance use disorder, and incarceration. My period of incarceration was from 2009 to 2014. It was the culmination of a desperate slide into addiction and mental illness. And I committed 4 counts of robbery, which landed me a 15-year sentence in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. I served 6 of it and the remainder on parole, and managed to recreate a career that was pretty magnificent, and launched a private practice just about 4 years ago doing leadership development, training and facilitation. I work with incredible leaders. Most, probably about 70% of them, also have similar life experiences, and I do training and coaching with them to help them to do magnificent things in their own careers. And finally, I work with communities across Texas to help to facilitate their planning to keep people with mental illness out of the criminal justice system. So that's my short introduction.
Okay, why don't we start with why did you write the book?
So I will tell you that it actually started out as a lark. I read a great leadership book by a Navy SEAL named Jocko Willink, and it was really about, he details some Navy SEAL missions that went wrong, and how he as a commander had to learn as a leader to become really own the results. And it's something that I believe in firmly. And I was like, you know what? I also have some experiences that I learned under fire, and that being in prison, that I think would be really useful for an audience. And so I jumped in, but as I went, I realized that if I was going to write this, I also had to reckon with my own past, with with mental illness, how trauma played a role, my own integrity. I had to reckon with all of that. And I was surprised that it evolved from merely a leadership book into a memoir, and one that I will admit is sometimes really hard to read for me and sometimes really exhilarating for me. So it became something different from what I expected.
The title, The Path of Rocks and Thorns, Leadership Lessons Learned from the Prison Cell. The Path of Rocks and Thorns, how did you come about that particular title?
Well, I mean, on a sort of basic level, the thorns that are held on prison wire, the rocks where I was addicted to crack cocaine. So on that basic level, but I also believe truly that people are born to do magnificent things, and that inspiration is constantly flowing. And there's a biblical parable about the seeds being thrown everywhere, but sometimes they fall within the rocks and thorns, and they're stifled and they're crushed and buried. But everyone has that inspiration if they can truly tap into that. And so the metaphors that you walk through them to find what's on the other side of it, if you're willing to do that work.
How long did it take you to write?
I started in April of last year, and it was a labor of love. I didn't realize it would take so long. I got some help from a hybrid publisher, which was great, manuscripts, and they helped me with editing. They just helped me to stay accountable, gave me some co-writing experience and things like that. So I'm really glad I did it. It made it for a better product at the end.
How long did the editing process take?
Oh my gosh. There were so many pieces to it. There was sort of positioning, and then I had to write the manuscript. So I had an editor there keeping me on track and editing my work. Then there was the whole period of just like doing revisions editing. I had an editor there to help me, and then copy editing. Wow, it was rough. I was doing, I don't know, and anywhere from 10 to 15 hours per week to stay on track.
Your cover, was that difficult to get done for you?
I had some help with that from manuscripts. We talked about a vision. I sent them photos and just pieces of inspiration that I could think of, and they sent me back multiple copies of possible manuscripts, and we just kind of we gravitated eventually towards that cover, and I'm pretty pleased with it. There's one thing about the book that you might enjoy, is that I use the metaphor of Dante's Inferno, where you're descending downward into into hell, and at the bottom of hell is where you start to climb again. And so you can see the levels of barbed wire on the cover that is suggestive of that descent into hell, where you can finally climb again.
Do you have a copy of the book in front of you?
I will get it. Hey, love, could you get me a copy of the book?
Yeah, I should have asked you that when we were backstage before the show started, just to have something there to hold up.
I have my beautiful business partner and wife, and she is going to find me a copy of the book, and I will get it for you.
Yeah, I saw the Thorns earlier. I mean, the barbed wire, but I didn't associate that at the time because when you said from a prison cell, automatically I went to the barbed wire as a prison cell or a barrier, and so I didn't understand that context, but I see it now.
Yes.
What do
And
you?
the birds, I argued with them about that. I was like, every prison memoir has birds on it. And so I was trying to not use it. And they say, there's a reason why the birds are on prison memoirs. And I said, okay, fine.
What do you expect people to get out of your book?
I think that people are going to find a refreshing look at leadership, that leadership is born sometimes from the greatest struggles in their lives. It's born from failure. It's born from sometimes self-sabotage. It's born from walking through addiction, mental illness, and finding what's on the other side of that and tapping into what you learn. There's certain transformational moments that can happen in someone's journey, and you discover, hey, what is it that I truly believe about leadership? What does that turning point tell me about what I'm capable of in the world, and how do I inspire others with it? So it's really for anyone who really understands what it means to kind of walk through their own personal hell, and then let that be the inspiration for them, the resilience that they bring into their work, and let it form their own values.
It's interesting. Leadership is something we all hear, we all experience, but if you ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different answers to what is leadership. Do you have a particular definition that you like?
Well, I just think that everyone is born to create something. Like, you're creating things all of the time, always, and part of that is really in collaboration and connection with others, right? And so leadership is about creation. It's about having a profound impact on people. It's becoming effective with other people, whether it's with your manager or direct reports, with your community members, with your children, right? It's becoming effective in a really authentic way. That's leadership to me. It's about creation.
And as you were writing this book, was there any part of it that became, I'm going to say, super simple because I know this one, or I really want to do that, but I can't find the right words or put it in the right order, a little more challenging than others. Let's talk about the challenging part of the contents.
So I couldn't write this without also describing the descent into mental illness, suicidality, reckoning with traumas of the past, how it is that a former adjunct professor would go so deep into mental illness and substance use that he would eventually commit 4 counts of robbery. That was really tough. And I will tell you, when I described that descent in detail in one chapter and then more suggestive in others, but I would say for several months, when I went back to proof that chapter, it made me dizzy and nauseous inside. I'm not telling you my audience is going to feel nauseous. For me, it was connecting with just absolutely traumatic memories. And it was really hard for me to read, and it was really hard to write. I love where those chapters go, because there is transformation at the end of that. But wow, that was really tough to write.
Well, congratulations. The book was published this week. You said last Tuesday, I believe.
Yes.
And you are a #1 best-selling author for new release. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And,
I'm sorry. I have to pinch myself. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I've never been a #1 in a new category, and it's in 2 categories, in leadership and addiction recovery.
okay, you've mentioned the term mental illness, and there's various kinds. We got anxiety, you got depression, you got a whole host of them. Was there a certain point in time where you knew you had a problem, but you didn't know what it was, or you knew you had a problem and you knew what it was? Because there's a lot of transition there.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, I mean, I noticed it when I was first 11 years old, like 11-year-old feeling suicidal and actually attempting suicide. All right, that was my first indication that something was wrong. I didn't know that that was called depression, but it haunted me through my years. It wasn't until I was in my late 20s that I actually sought help, and someone could explained to me that what I was experiencing was called depression. I would tell you that I was sometimes a frequent caller to the suicide hotline. And as I got some help from myself and medication and things of that nature, I actually volunteered to become a suicide hotline counselor. And it was absolutely transformative to me. And I also became then the hotline trainer. So I actually trained suicide hotline volunteers as the result of my own mental illness. So, but eventually that descended into major panic disorder. So I was having panic attacks. And, I think the last diagnosis, you get lots of diagnoses, but was a bipolar disorder. Happy to describe that. But that's it, so there's lots of different types of mental illness, but that was what it was for me.
Now, the analogy or the metaphor, I'm not sure the exact word to use, of Dante's Inferno to your book. You talk about a descent, you talk about rising back out. If I remember right from my Dante's Inferno, you went down, you never came back up again. Unless you were the guy from way back when, who was the guide?
Virgil.
Yes, Virgil. You didn't get a chance to go to purgatory or to anywhere else. So you were there and you were stuck.
Yeah.
So how did the vision of putting your book into a Dante's world develop?
So I read Dante's Inferno, or the entire Divine Comedy, when I was in prison. I actually met a retired banker who had lived in Florence for a while, and he and I started a book club. So he was pretty intimately familiar with the book and what Dante himself was going through. Dante had been exiled from Florence, just being on the wrong side of a political party, and he did something truly epic. He did an epic poem in the style of epic poets like Virgil and Homer. So it was just a breathtaking thing that he accomplished. And so when I read it, I'll tell you what happened was I read it, and then other people in the dorm saw that I had read it, and they said, "Hey, I want to read it too." And so I sat and read it with them, and then other people. So I ended up reading it multiple times with people who were just looking to better themselves, try out classical literature. So, it had deep resonance for me for that reason. It really represented people trying to ascend, trying to deepen their education and awareness, to create opportunities for themselves. People in prison don't want to stay in prison, and they want to create a better life, and that's what Dante's Inferno represented for me. So ultimately, that was my inspiration for modeling the book after Dante's Inferno.
Doug, we're going to be going to a commercial break here in about 20 seconds or so, but I remember the book that I had for Dante's had the Italian on one side and the English on the other. And because, as you said, it's an epic poem, and in the Italian, it actually has the rhyming, and but in English, there's no rhyming. And some of the times it's very difficult to understand the context And if you're not looking at the footnotes sometimes, anyway, I found it difficult, not impossible, but difficult to get through. I can imagine once you get through it a couple of times, it's a little bit easier because you kind of know everything. But anyway, but let's go to a commercial break and we'll come back and we'll kind of go further on down your leadership role. So.
Get ready to wear the brand that's changing the world of media. Introducing the official USA Global TV and Radio online store. From our TV show hosts to our incredible global guests, you asked, we delivered. Rep your appearance with pride. Whether you've been on air, hosted a show, or tuned in, we have something just for you. Visit us at usaglobaltvradioshoп.myspreadshop.com and start shopping today. Check back frequently. We're dropping fresh new designs all the time. Showcase your role in our global community. These designs celebrate your voice, your story, your presence. It's more than just merchandise. It's a movement of hope, inspiration, education, and elevated listening. Head to usaglobaltvradioshoп.myspreadshop.com. Your spotlight awaits. USA Global TV and Radio. Elevate your style. Elevate the world.
Hi, howdy y'all. I'm Red O'Loughlin here. We're on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And my guest today is Doug Smith, author, leadership coach. Doug, please join me back up here on stage.
Absolutely. I'm going to buy some of that merchandise, by the way. That looked pretty cool.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much.
Sure thing. Oh, and I have the book.
Oh, fantastic. Put it up just a little bit closer to the screen there. Okay, so you have the birds, you have the you almost have the book. Okay. So we have the birds, we have the barbed wire, leadership lessons from a prison cell. Okay, so you have a life experience prior to that with education, personal experiences, a little bit of mental health, developed into abuse, substance abuse, et cetera. How does your leadership, now I don't want to use the word style because I don't think I said, the leadership that you practice, that how does taking the life lessons a person have and expand them to making them a leader differ than the traditional same approach that, okay, that person has this background, this is what we need to do? Because there's two different kinds there. You have non-incarceration, non-suicidal, non-drug, non-mental health, non versus, I'm going to use the word, quote, normal for lack of all this other non-stuff, from a normal person advancing into a leadership role. So there's something unique about that. And that I think is kind of the crux that you've got into the book. So tell us about how it really is different than the other ones.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced that it's not the same. I think that people bring their lived experiences with them. I think that what's happening internally is oftentimes gets reflected externally. In fact, it generally does. So you create what's going on inside, and I think anyone can relate with that. I think for people who have been through experiences like mine and have experienced turning points inside, it creates just a new environment, a whole new ecosystem inside of you, the one that it's more liberated. You're not needing validation from others. You can handle discomfort. You can handle conflict in a right. You just are, I guess you could say, you just have more depth and clarity inside, and that ends up manifesting externally. I think you kind of know who you are too. Being a leader also means, your leadership of effectiveness comes out when you are clear about who you are and what your values are, and that absolutely happens when you've gone through experiences and experienced turning points like I have. Yeah, so like you can make decisions without worried about how the other person is going to react because you're centered in who you truly are.
Okay, so you have people who have experiences that they weren't allowed to just negate in their mind. They had to actually live it, as opposed to others that, I quit, I move over to this other guy. There's too much stress, too much drama. So
Yeah.
you have, you can't move out of a prison cell because there's too much drama. You can't, you have restrictions. So I can easily see where some of those makes you a stronger person, but some of them can beat you down so much you can't even get your head back up again.
Yeah, I had some experience. I had some really great experiences or opportunities when I was in prison. And so I'm not recommending anyone go to prison, and it's not a great experience. But I got to serve as what's called a peer educator inside of prison. And that is where people in the state prison, Texas Department of Criminal Justice, we all wear white uniforms. So I always say men or women in white actually teach classes and run groups to end the cultural acceptance of sexual violence inside of prison. And outside of prison, rapes have happened throughout the times that we've had prisons, and it's become generally accepted in culture that that's just part of your sentence, and we just say no more. And so the prison system allowed us, or they helped to create and allowed us as people in white to do groups without officers present to do something unspeakable and courageous, and that is to report sexual assault if they experienced it or witnessed it. And it's a very courageous thing you could do. You can get harmed and persecuted or even killed for snitching in prison. And so they were tough classes, and we had to reckon with whether or not we were being truly effective as peer educators, and sometimes we weren't. So we had to dedicate ourselves doubly, triply to truly making an impact, to seeing how the trainings were landing, to accept feedback, do things that were really difficult for me to do. And so I had to do it in prison. And I'll tell you, the net effect of that is it's the collective effort, but I know that we contributed. And when I got out of prison, probably within a few years after I got out of prison, I looked at the statistics, and from during that period that I was in prison and the years afterwards, the sexual assault report rate increased dramatically. So people behind bars are reporting sexual assault. So they're ending that acceptance of sexual violence. That took leadership.
Vulnerabilities. Being incarcerated, there are certain things that you find out about yourself. And it's a lived experience you talked about. Do you find that not exploiting those vulnerabilities, but those vulnerabilities can make you a better leader because you understand things at a much more intimate level?
Yes, I would say that my vulnerabilities were debilitating prior to prison. When I went to prison, there's certain things you can't do anymore. Like I can't get external validation from people. I craved it before. It was paralyzing before. I didn't want to accept feedback from people because it meant something about myself. So it harmed my identity. So there were all sorts of ways in which I was already incarcerated prior to prison. In prison, you're not getting where you can't. You're incapable of making someone else see you as a better person. So that has to come from a totally internal place, a reckoning with your own sense of integrity. So in a lot of ways, what prison did was erase the things that were causing me so much distress. And so I was able to come out of prison and do things that I wasn't able to do before, like accept that I fail sometimes, or that people aren't particularly pleased with my style of leadership or the results that I'm producing, or if I land in a way that is reminiscent of people who might have harmed them in the past, right? I could accept those results in a way that I never could before and actually learn from them and make changes in my leadership.
We have a question from a comment here. It says, were you in a state or federal prison, and what's the difference? Now, you said you were in the Texas state penal system,
Yes.
so it's Texas state. So I don't know that you have any federal, but you may understand the difference between the two.
Well, in terms of the conditions of confinement, they're night and day. So the federal prisons, I don't recommend that people go there, but they're air conditioned. You get case managers. There is programming. You get paid for some of your labor. Texas prison's totally different. 70% of the prisons aren't air conditioned, so it's inhuman conditions. So that's another reason why I used Dante's Inferno as a metaphor. It is inhumanly hot inside of Texas prisons, and the Human Rights Clinic at the University of Texas School of Law has actually covered that as a grievous human rights violation. So it's inhuman in that way. Lots of other differences. There is programming, there's vocational training and some training. It's certainly not as robust as the federal system. So it's a far more uncomfortable environment than the federal prison. Since I haven't been to federal, I don't want to make it seem like glory. I don't want people to glorify it. I'm not going to tell you to go do a federal crime instead of a state crime.
Okay, you were in prison. You were there for mental health. How did they take care of mental health offenders, or whatever the appropriate word in use today is?
Yeah, so there's no care in prison, right? That's not something that you experience, it's care. If you have mental health challenges, if you need medications, they'll prescribe them. At least my experience was, there were no treatment groups, there was no augment to medications. So you generally had to live either with the symptoms or some relief with medications. It also impacts your housing assignment, your job assignment. So if you are on psychiatric medications, you tend to have worse cell assignments because you have heat restrictions. So I was put into a dungeon-like setting in one of the oldest buildings in the unit, like the cranking cells, what you imagine from Shawshank Redemption. They put us there because on the bottom floor of it was slightly lower temperature than other parts of the prison, but it was still stiflingly hot. And there were certain jobs that I couldn't get, and I also couldn't become a trustee because I had mental illness. So what I ultimately had to do was go off of my psychiatric medications and learn to live with the actual symptoms of depression and anxiety. It was a horrifying experience. It was rough. I detail it in the book. On the other end of that, I did learn to kind of experience symptoms of mental illness. I learned to just watch them, to observe them, as opposed to getting caught into them in such a way that I start doing something destructive. So in that way, I actually learned to cope with mental illness. That being said, when I got out of prison, I realized that there was a lot I needed to do to make sure that I was healthy mentally. And so I have a pretty robust program of mental health recovery that I use today. And one of the things I say in the book is that mental health recovery is leadership.
This is going to sound like a strange question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Did you ever see any ghosts in prison?
That's a really good question. The unit that I was on is the oldest unit in Texas. It was started, I think it was built in 1848. So we've got some very old buildings. In the Pill Line, the Pill Line was the location where they had Old Sparky, the electric chair. And they still have the death chamber there where they do the lethal injections. And I have heard stories from people who, fellow incarcerated people who served food or brought food over to the death chamber for the witnesses and so on, and that they've had encounters with ghosts. So I didn't personally experience it, but there are people who will swear up and down that they did indeed have an encounter.
My daughter used to be a prison guard there in Huntsville. And,
oh, wow.
And she was standing guard duty with a gun taller than her because she's only 4'10". But she said George, I think was the name of the ghost that everybody knew out there, and that was his area. And he would constantly play with her hair. You know, she'd be pulling on it, and all of a sudden she turns around, there's nobody there. But this was not continuous, but enough to become annoying. And
wow.
And one time she was walking in, you know, everything's like 1 o'clock in the morning, but everything's closed. And all of a sudden she sees somebody walking in front of her and in an inmate's outfit. And all of a sudden he walks through the brick wall. And so, you know, she's personally seen a few. And so it's interesting that they're there, but we discount them a lot. But anyway, before we get to wrapping everything up, one last question. How do you take care of yourself today now that you have freedom to do what you want in order to maintain control of your health, physical, mental, and emotional?
Absolutely. As I said, mental health recovery is leadership. I'm really open about my mental health recovery because I model it. I'm open about my story because oftentimes I'm the only example of mental health recovery that anyone has ever seen. So I am very open about it. And for me, that means I have incredible nurse practitioner who helps me to find the right blend of medications. I have a therapist. I do a therapy group. I do recovery meetings. In the evenings, I do yoga. I started to become a yoga teacher, but maybe that'll happen later. I couldn't do that and write a book at the same time. But yes, I do practice mental health recovery, and sometimes I have to work harder at that than others.
Real quick question. Are you planning a second book? And if so, tell us very briefly what it is, and then I'd like to have you tell people how to get in touch with you.
Beautiful. Well, I don't specifically have another book. I really am tuned into my clients and some of the things that they're experiencing. I hear things about like imposter syndrome, a sense of feeling deeply inadequate, and that continually comes up with people. I think I'd really like to explore that, to dissect it, to work on a book where people sort of learn to experience their emotions differently, find wisdom in their own emotions. So that is something that I'm interested in doing. And you asked another question and I don't remember it.
How do people get in touch with you? How do they get your book?
Awesome. Well, it's The Path of Rocks and Thorns, Leadership Lessons from a Prison Cell. It is available on Amazon. In most formats, I still have to record the audiobook. So for those of you who like to listen, that'll be in November, December. And if you want to reach me, you can find me either by emailing me, that's doug@d-degree.com, or go to my website, www.d-degree.com.
-degree, DEGREE.com.
Yeah.
And with that, Doug, I really appreciate your time today. I look forward to our next conversation, and congratulations again on being a best-selling author and on getting your first book out there. And I just really enjoyed our conversation today.
So did I, Red. Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay, take care. Red O'Loughlin here. We're wrapping up The Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Our guest today was Doug Smith and his book, The Path of Rocks and Thorns, Leadership Lessons from a Prison Cell. My next show comes up here in about 20 minutes. It's Talking Heads, and it's a 3-part series that I'm doing the conclusion today on hallmarks of health. We've talked about what is a true hallmark of health. Why are you healthy? What's happening in your body at the cellular level that gives you some degree of better health compared to somebody else who is not experiencing that. And so we've gone through almost all of them. I'm going to wrap them all up today. But most everything that happens to give you better health is literally something happening at the cellular level in the body. There are some environmental things, some whole body things, some emotional things. But in reality, most everything that makes us healthy happens at the cellular level. So please join me for Talking Heads here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network next. Take care, y'all. Bye now.
Have you ever felt unheard? Like your words float into a void, leaving you invisible and disconnected? How about feeling judged, when assumptions overshadow your truth, leaving you misunderstood and defensive? And then there's that moment when someone offers solutions you never asked for, dismissing your feelings and leaving you more frustrated than before. It doesn't have to be this way. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the listening mentor, understands. She's here to help you reclaim your voice, build stronger connections, and create meaningful conversations that inspire understanding and mutual respect. Through her groundbreaking books, online and in-person courses, and interactive workshops, you'll learn how to navigate life's most challenging interactions. Discover the power of elevated listening and transform how you communicate. Master setting boundaries and asking permission to protect your peace. Learn to recognize and release judgment, fostering empathy and true connection. Dr. Kerbeck also offers personalized coaching, one-on-one or group sessions designed to fit your unique needs. Whether in person or virtually on StreamYard, her guidance will empower you to thrive. You don't have to struggle alone. The path to deeper connections and better relationships start here. Visit drjacqueline.com or usaglobaltv.com. Join a global community of empowered listeners and transform your life, one meaningful conversation at a time. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck is the listening mentor. Start your journey today.
From the magical world of the amazing adventures of Lady Ella comes a heartwarming new journey filled with kindness, courage, and compassion. Lady Ella, the beloved ladybug and listening mentor, is back, and this time she is not alone. Meet her brave and thoughtful brother, Lord Jack. Together, they take flight on their very first kindness adventure. Along the way, they meet 3 new friends in need: a duck feeling discouraged, a mouse struggling to be understood, and a busy little bee who's completely lost. But with the power of elevated listening and simple acts of kindness, Lady Ella and Lord Jack show us how understanding and empathy can make the biggest difference in someone's day. Written by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the listening mentor, this 9th book in the best-selling Lady Ella series teaches children ages 5 to 10 the essential skills of listening, kindness, and etiquette. Now available for pre-order on Amazon. Scan the QR code and order your copy today.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Steve Klein Art at steveklein.art.
My name is Steve Klein, born Manchester, England, 1953. My quest in my lifetime is to create artwork from my soul and the deepness within my wildest dreams and fantasies. In 2012, my heart stopped when I was given too much anesthetic for a minor knee operation, and this near-death experience took me to another multi-dimensional world, an out-of-body experience, and I was given the gift of being blessed by an overwhelming, burning passion to become, for the very first time in my life, an artist with an eternal, passionate desire to bring my art, which I've named multi-dimensional, subliminal, freeform art, to the world, as only 3% recover from what I experienced. And now in my golden years want to release my cosmic, vital energy through my art to allow people to be a part of my cosmic dance.
To learn more, email roccogoodwine@gmail.com. For VIP pricing, mention USA Global TV and Radio.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honored to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations. meaningful connections and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USAGlobalTV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.